He looks like Adam Ray.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. You've met
Kind of.
Adam Ray at this point in your travels?
I've never met Adam Ray. I would love to. That guy's like one of my comedy heroes, but
Yeah.
no, I've never.
Who are your comedy heroes?
Man, for sure, Ron White. That guy. That guy's a big inspiration growing up. He did a
Yeah.
thing called the Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
That's like with Jeff Foxworthy and
Yeah,
Larry the Cable Guy and
yeah. And then growing up in the South of the United States, that was everybody's like go to for comedy.
yeah.
And so people that have never been into comedy ever, that was like how they got started. A lot of people, grown adults, kids, you name it. So my first comedian or my first time ever hearing comedy was with a comedian named George Lopez.
Yep.
He um, he put out a special in like 2002, 2001 called "Why Are You Crying?" And I remember hearing it bits and pieces. Don't know what they're talking about because it's very inappropriate
Yep.
material. But I
Mhm.
remember the effect it had on my family, my relatives, howling laughing. I mean, they're holding their guts, just
Yeah.
falling over laughing, listening to this stuff. And I remember realizing, like, man, I wish I could have that effect on somebody. And that's kind of where comedy came into the picture for me. Like,
Mm.
oh, that's a thing that's possible, or it's a thing that exists.
Yeah.
And
It hasn't come up in any of your sort of interviews so far, but what was your family life like when you were that age? Did you have a mum and dad both around? Big family, small family, where are they now? Do they like what you do?
so I grew up kind of strange. I've never met my father. I just recently found out who my dad was, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, my mom had me real young, didn't want to be a mom, so then my grandma raised me for the most part, and I was just bounced around between like friends and relatives my whole childhood.
Hmm.
Lived with whoever would take me in, mainly my grandma,
Yep.
but sometimes be one of my aunts, or sometimes it'd be a family friend or something, and bounced around a lot, moved around a lot, and ended up back with my mom when she was older,
Hmm.
and she was married, and I moved in with her and her husband, and lived with them until I graduated high school.
And that's you've got. How do you feel about them now? Your mum particularly. Is that a healthy relationship? Do you
No,
know?
no, I cut
I
her
don't mean to
off.
be so hard hitting so soon. But
That's fine.
yeah.
I don't really care. I cut my mom off a couple years ago, like zero contact.
Mm.
I feel like, hey, if you don't care about me, then I have to care about myself, and that entails not, keeping contact with you.
Mm.
And it's kind of what I left it at with her. And so no, yeah, no contact with her.
So who were your role models beyond comedy growing up? Sports people, people in the community, other people on TV, because, to be fair and to, just blow smoke a little bit, you're a nice, polite, well-adjusted, successful dude. That doesn't happen by accident, you know?
Man, I mean, I'd say most of my role models are not really celebrities. They're
Mm.
not people I can name that you would know.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Chris from around the corner, he used to, like help me move the fucking shit. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
go
so
on.
like I remember seeing certain people when I was a kid and looking at him and like that's a respectable man, I want to be like that guy,
Mhm.
or female, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Um, just seeing strong, like reliable, trustworthy people that I'm like, man, those are good people, and I want to be like them.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple characters throughout my life that I saw that I wanted to model myself after. And I feel like some people that have, let's say, a dad that they're real close with,
Mhm.
they have a lot of pressure. Like, man, my dad was a truck driver, my dad was a welder,
Mhm.
and I got to do that, right? Or I got to do something like that. And they always feel like there's a pattern they need to follow. And for me, I was like, man, I don't have any parents. I can make my own path. You could use that as a crutch, or you can use that as like an opportunity to be who you want to be. And
Mhm.
I've always used it to try to be who I want to be.
Okay, that's really cool. And on that note, like truck driving here, or at least what I know of it, my dad was a truck driver in the 80s. My uncle was a truck driver in the 80s and 90s. I'm not particularly close with my uncle who's now deceased, and my dad's, he's a old ethnic man. They don't really communicate their emotions and that sort of thing. Um, but what I'm getting at is it's a stable, it was, or at least a stable career that paid decent money. So how did you get into that from such a young age? Like you've been doing it for a while now, and it's a big responsibility as well, the actual task that you have to fulfill and complete. And with that would have come the stability of, I assume, a decent paycheck and the knowledge of traveling and learning, on the road. So how did that become, oh yeah, I'm going to do that and see where that goes?
So right outside of, or right after high school, I went to what they call the oil field here in Texas or America. I don't know if
Oil
you'll have that in.
fields?
Correct.
Okay, yep.
So I went to the oil field out of high school, and I did that for a couple of years. And I was 21 years old, and I lost my job. I got laid off, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to sit around and collect what they call unemployment in the
Hmm.
states. They have like a, I don't really know how it works, but pretty much the government gives you money for not having a job until you find a job.
Yeah.
Some people take that as an opportunity, like, hey, I'm just gonna not do anything for a little while. And for me, I'm like, nah, I'm better than that.
Yeah.
Not that it's a shame or you should be ashamed of it. I'm not saying that at all. But in my mind, I'm 21 years old. I'm healthy.
Mm.
I'm willing and able. I'm gonna go find some work. So I end up at this college that offers truck driving like school
Mm.
to get your commercial driver's license and
We call that
talk
a
to them.
heavy rigid.
A heavy rigid.
Heavy rigid license is the biggest form of commercial trucking uh, license you can obtain here.
Yeah, so in the States we call it a CDL, commercial driver's license.
So yeah, cool.
And uh, talking to them, it was like a lot of money. And I was like, I'm not going to blow my savings my first day not having a job. So I took off, and then they called me back and said, hey, why don't you come back to the office? I'm like, I don't want to, I appreciate your time, but I want to spend that kind of money. They're like, trust me, if you get back here, you won't regret it. So I drove, 45 minutes, about an hour back to the college where it was at. And there was a program where the government sponsored like 35 people in the state of Texas to pay for their school.
Hmm.
They had already chose everybody up until that moment. And then one guy, after I left, one guy called and dropped out of the class. And they're like, hey, call that kid back from earlier. For some reason they thought I deserved it. So they called me back, and I went in, and sure enough, they paid for my CDL school. So at that point I felt like, well, this is the path life wants me to, or the universe, or whatever the path they want me to take. And that's the way I felt about it. So I got my driver's license, and I started hauling what they call reefer, refrigerated trailers.
Okay. Reefer
I
means
hauled
something different
produce.
here.
Huh?
Reefer means something different here.
Yeah, reefer means like weed, drugs,
Yeah.
but it's slang for refrigerated trailer,
Mhm.
reefer. And so I hauled a reefer unit from Mexico to New Jersey, which is like 3 days worth of driving in a truck and an 18-wheeler. Um, and I did that for like 7 months. I hauled produce from Mexico to New Jersey. And then this company that hauls horses commercially, I get a hold of them, or they get a hold of me. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I submitted an application, and they took a look at my application and were like, they called me back and said they were interested in me.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm down. And they saw my age, and I was 21, and they're like, oh, sorry, we just noticed how young you were. You sound a lot older on the phone. We don't hire kids. So I'm like, all right, well, if you change your mind, give me a call. They called me back like an hour or two later, and he says, the boss wants to take a chance on you and fly you up for an interview. Would you be willing, interested in that? And I said, yeah. When you want to fly me out? They said tomorrow morning. And I'm like, all right. And he said, take some time to think about it. I said, no, book the flight, because I'll say no if I think about it. And the next morning, I flew up and had my interview and got hired, and that's how I started hauling horses commercially. Was then when I was 21,
That's
and
wild.
that's how I got into that. If that answers your question
It
in any way.
does. Fantastic. It's like how like flight attendants will never fly the plane, but they learn about aircraft, they learn about fuselages, engines, fuel, all that stuff. Did you know about horses before you started this, or did you learn all about that industry once you started driving? Did you have an interest? Did you like horse racing? Like, did you know anything going in about how to handle these things?
So I grew up in South Texas, which means everybody's a bit of a cowboy, even the people that are not cowboys. Most people know how to ride a horse, and most people know how to rope, work cattle. So I grew up amongst that lifestyle. I never cowboyed for a living. and I didn't grow up cowboying. If them, some people would like would say, "Well, you look like one or you sound like one." I'm like, "Yeah." Compared to the real cowboys, I ain't. You know, compared to somebody from New York City, I'm fucking John Wayne. You know. So anyway, yeah, I grew up around horses and stuff, and I loved horses. I hauled a lot of horses as a kid for people for free. So when I found out you could do it for money, I'm like, well, fucking awesome, hell yeah, this job. It's like this job was meant for me, you know.
That's really cool. So what would you say is the worst possible thing that has happened on the road with your precious cargo?
Man, there's so many different possibilities. When I first started hauling horses commercially, an old timer told me, if you can imagine a horse doing something, it'll happen.
Oh, gee.
If you can picture a horse growing wings and flying away, it might happen one day. So just be ready for it. And there's been a couple instances where people have been injured and almost killed, and there's been people that have died doing the job. And um, worst possible scenarios for me is that I do something that causes the horse harm. You know,
Mm.
that's for me the worst possible scenario. And then it just gets better from there, or not better, but like if a horse has a health issue that I didn't cause, but it happens, it's a little bit easier to live with, but it's still pretty bad.
Mm.
But that's why you got to know horses, because you got to know what to do in that situation. Where let's say you have a horse that's like what they call having a colic, like it's having issues with his intestines and stuff,
Mm.
and you got to be able to identify the symptoms of when it's about to start happening. You
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
being around so many horses, you can start to kind of pick up like, oh, I think this is about to be an issue. Let me start arranging for a veterinarian nearby and
Yeah.
figure out how to get this horse seen by a professional.
Yeah.
And compared to some people that might not be able to identify something like that, they just let the horse die, not
Sure. And
knowingly.
yeah, and that would roll down on you at the other end if you've got an animal that's, gone. Who are they going to take out their anger on? Yeah.
Yeah, and I can live with is if something bad happens and I did everything I could to try to make the situation better, I could live with that.
Mhm.
Versus if I get a horse hurt out of negligence, that would haunt me the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a there was an incident where I drove past what they call a weigh station. I don't know if you'll have those in
Yeah.
Australia.
Some version. Yeah.
So I drove past the weigh station, which I'm legally not supposed to do, but I had a load of horses on, and the line for the weigh station extended out to the highway.
Mhm.
So in my mind, if I stay parked at the back of the line, it's very easy for somebody to run in the back of my trailer and kill my horses. So I chose to do something illegal, which is bypass that weigh station, and I got pulled over by the police, and they were going to give me a pretty hefty ticket. It's a big deal, they don't like when you do that. And the state trooper is what they're called.
Mhm.
They pulled me over. Said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "I know exactly why you pulled me over." They said, "Why'd you do it?" So I got a load of horses on back there. I'm not going to volunteer to sit at the back of that line and have somebody run in the back of me. It's not a load of tomatoes back there. If somebody runs in the back of my trailer, I'm gonna have to live with that the rest of my life.
Mhm.
I know the consequences of what I did, and I'm willing to live with that. So write me the ticket. I'm not trying to argue my way out of it. I'm fine with it. And she saw how serious I felt about what I did,
Mhm.
and she chose to give me a break. And like, hey, I thought about it, and I get it. She's like, it's still wrong. What you did is still wrong, but I understand, and I'm gonna give you a warning. Said, yes, ma'am, and I'll do it again.
That's some silver lining. I was going to say, if she gave you a ticket, you can't trust anyone. And I was thinking about this earlier. Um, Speaking of not being able to trust, how about I think she's from Texas. I could be wrong. The Hawk Tour girl and the crypto in the news at the moment. Are you familiar with what's going on with her?
I know that there is a situation. I don't know what it is. She's from Tennessee, I believe, or Kentucky.
Okay.
Uh, I'm not familiar with the situation, and it sounds like people made terrible financial investments, and then they're upset at somebody else.
Pretty much
I'm
the long and short of all crypto scams, yeah. It's not financial advice, and they put too much stock in a celebrity that to have their best interests at heart, which is the short version. But yeah, well, it's making the news here, which I thought was interesting. But then I watch all my news on the internet. I don't watch it through an antenna, so I try to, not consume through biased media outlets, which is a big problem in the US as well. You've got Newsmax over here, and then what, CNN over here? Is that the opposing sides, or is CNN over here?
Yeah. So CNN's viewed as being on the left,
That's right.
right? Like
Yep.
liberal Democrat, and then Newsmax like is on the right,
Yep.
along with Fox is what they say is like probably closer to center than Newsmax, but still on the right.
Yeah.
I don't watch any of them to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's very
A
depressing.
lot of it a lot of it doesn't affect my life negatively or positively to watch the news. So
Hmm.
why even do it? Like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of how I think about it. I'm sure if it's important enough, I'll find out about it. Huh?
It always bubbles to the surface somehow. Carlos, I know you from Kill Tony, and Kill Tony could probably be best explained as a gong show or a Got Talent show. So comedians get 1 minute to their names are pulled out of a bucket at random, and you go up, you do a minute. Hopefully, it's good. And you get interviewed, and historically, we've seen people who were built for that sort of career have done extremely well in that format. They've been funny throughout their set and throughout their interview. They give the hosts a lot to work with and all that sort of stuff. So you've been on 3 times.
Yes, sir.
And you've done very well all 3 times, and you've been a great interview. And Tony seems to have a good affinity for you and likes your style and your persona. And I'm learning that your persona is not very different at all to what's on stage, except maybe your hat's a bit smaller here. What I want to know is the energy out, because basically, initially, you guys lined up out in the alleyway, you put your name in the bucket, and then you were put in the street, literally under the sun, do what you will, and wait for to hear your name be called. And then that evolved into being put in the bar across the street, if I'm not mistaken. Now,
Right.
from the moment your name's called, let's say the first time, so you would have been out in the alley the first time, maybe. Tell me about like the people behind around you when you are the chosen one, and then the backstage area, like literally what we see, what we don't see just behind that curtain, to immediately after you're dismissed, you're given your joke book. Like what, how does that feel? How are people really reacting around you? Because I get the feeling like you'll have your people who you're familiar with and they'll be happy for you, but there's got to be a lot of the polar opposite of these positivity because of the envy and the jealousy and the frustration and all that sort of stuff. So if we could start with first time you being pulled, the go to woe. Tell me about that.
So my first time I ever signed up, um, I was in line like everybody else, and then somebody said, "Hey, if you've never signed up before, there's a second line," and you kind of skip the line, right? So I skipped the line, signed up, and I didn't really get to interact with anybody on the sign up part. And then I was on the inside when I got pulled the first time, so I was like in the audience in the show. So I didn't really get to hang out or be around those people when I got pulled the first time.
That was at
I don't know.
Anto's, wasn't it?
No, it was at the mothership,
Okay.
and so, anyways, yeah, I get pulled from the inside, go up on stage. It went the way it went, pretty decent. And then I was invited to hang out with everybody after the show, and that was pretty cool.
So who's
Tony,
everybody? Who's everybody?
that show, uh, Bobby Lee was there, and there was just a bunch of comics from the mothership that were hanging out at the bar called Mitzi's next
Yeah.
door, or right, right there. And I don't remember exactly celebrity wise, like who else was there besides Tony and Red Band and them. But I got to hang out with a bunch of those people. I met like Cam Patterson and them.
Hmm.
Uh, all the Kill Tony people were there, and that was cool. I kept my mouth shut. I don't really talk when I find myself in a scenario where I'm around a bunch of like people that are celebrities, whatever. I try to be a fly on the wall and just talk whenever I'm spoken to,
Yeah.
because I don't want to say something out of line or out of place, and then everybody's like, "Who the fuck is that guy? Who let him in here?" I don't. I don't feel. I don't feel like I'm that interested to just be what they call what's the word for it whenever you're like everybody's attention is on you.
The center of attention.
Yeah, like there's way more interesting people in this room,
Hmm.
and I'll wait until somebody is interested in what I have to say until I say something.
Sure.
And I don't want to wear out my welcome. I think is what I'm getting at.
Sure. So when you come from the street and you're backstage, So let's say a minute before you're going on. So when the next person's just coming off, what's that backstage area like? Who's there? Did you have any interactions? Break a leg? Like, shape that vision
So
for me.
so my first time I got pulled, I was walked up from like the audience area, so
That's
I
from
didn't
the
get to
back.
interact.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to interact with anybody. They were just like, get up there, go
Yeah.
on. And
That's
I
right.
had no time for anything. I didn't I didn't know what jokes I wanted to tell. I had like four or maybe five jokes written in my
Mm.
head, and I never told them on stage in my life, before ever. And so there's no time, and nobody's like, "Hey, break a leg or do this or do that." Nobody says anything to me. They're just like, "There you go," and
Yeah.
I get tossed on stage, and you can see it. And like, if now that I'm telling you, you can see it. I walk on stage and I look out and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I said, "Well," because I had nothing to say. I didn't remember I forgot my jokes.
Yeah.
I was like, "Well," and then the
Everybody
crowd
laughed.
laughed.
Yeah.
Oh shit! And I literally like, "Oh, I have a joke. Let me say it real quick."
Yeah.
And then that was good, and it kind of got the ball rolling. So then the second joke came out, and then that went good. And but I didn't have any time to prepare. Nobody gave me any advice. It was just pretty like shooting from the hip, spur of the moment.
Mm.
And that was the first time. Second time I went on, I was part of the show. Like Tony had like scheduled me, and I'm gonna go up twice, two slots after Cam. I think it was is
Yeah.
what Tony came up to me and told me, "Hey, two spots after Cam, you're going up." Cool. So I got to hang out in the green room before the show, during the show, after the show. Um, Went up there. It went the way it went, pretty decent. And then the third time I got pulled, it was at the bar across the street. I signed up with everybody. I had one of my good friends, Maverick McWilliams, which went on. He got pulled right after I did, which I didn't know until I got off stage.
Yeah.
And I go behind the curtain. I'm like, I see Maverick. I'm like, oh shit, dude! I
That's
was
going to
so
be
excited,
amazing. Yeah.
and I was more excited for him than he was for himself, I think.
Mm.
And anyways, so I signed up for that show, and then I got pulled the first bucket pull of the night. So I literally had sat down, or I was standing there, and usually like when I sign up for Kill Tony, I have like jokes that I'm going over. Like, all right, I think I want to tell this one tonight. If I get pulled, I'm going to tell this joke.
Mm.
I didn't have time for any of that. I had a different joke I wanted to tell, and I panicked. Like right before I went out on the curtain, from behind the curtain, I panicked, and I told another joke that I liked that joke, but I felt like the other one I should have done. And looking back, I'm like, oh, fuck. But whatever.
Yeah. I
And
think that's it. Sorry, go on, please.
whenever I got pulled at poor choices, I actually got a pretty good reaction. Like people were cheering and clapping, like, yeah, like go fucking do it. And so it's been pretty positive. Like there's very few negative interactions I've had, and even those, I'm like, oh well, like not that big of a deal.
You're getting recognized around Austin on the streets, of course, now, I reckon.
I get recognized in Austin pretty well, and I get recognized in the most random places. Like I
Yeah.
was at a Dave and Buster's. I don't know. That's like do you know what that is?
Like it's like a Hard Rock Cafe sort of thing with games.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
like
And
an
I never,
arcade with food, maybe, an arcade bar, bowling.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd never been to one. And my buddy invited me. He's like, "Hey, you want to go to Dave and Buster's with me?" And I'm like, "Cool." And I'll play some skee ball with you. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And there was a homeless person having like a situation in the Dave and Buster's. So the cops and paramedics and everybody shows up to like take care of that. And as they're like wheeling out somebody on a stretcher, or no, maybe it wasn't. I think they brought her out in handcuffs for like
Yeah.
get out of here. One of the paramedics like, "Hey, are you the Kill Tony guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like,
Howdy.
"Stay right there." I'm like, "All right." So then after they put them in a car or whatever they did with them, he's like came up and talked to me. It was a paramedic. He came up and talked to me. He's like, "Hey man," and we just what I call bullshitting. We just bullshitted for a little bit,
Yeah.
and but that was pretty cool. I get recognized from random places. I was in the middle of nowhere in Kansas one time,
Mhm.
and the cashier at a gas station recognized me, and that's probably the most random place so far.
What's the biggest sort of perk or gratuity or gift or something that someone in the wild has given you or shouted you because they recognized you?
Probably Kill Tony tickets,
Okay.
like to go to the show. So on Mondays, the mothership has an open mic before Kill Tony,
Okay.
and I sign up to that every chance I get. So I went to go sign up. It was the episode when Adam Ray did that Jeremy character.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I signed up for the mothership open mic, and as I'm waiting for the list to come out, because the mothership open mic only gives like 15 or 16 spots, so it's a lottery system. I think I don't know. They might just choose them. I don't know,
Mhm.
but you wait to get picked, and as I'm waiting, somebody comes up to me, "Hey, are you the Kill Tony?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, what's up?" And they're like, "Man, I'm a huge fan. My girlfriend loves you. This and that." So I'm like, "Awesome." I'm always like, if you have enough time to be a fan of mine in any capacity, I feel like I have enough time to keep you a fan. That's kind of what I try to do.
That's cool.
And so I'll talk with you. Like I try not to be dismissive or anything. So as I'm talking to this couple, they're really nice and really respectful. And like I said, I'll stay there and talk to them for 2 or 3 hours if I have time for it.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, do you want to go to Kill Tony by any chance?" I'm like, "Are you inviting me to go see Kill Tony with you?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love duh." So I got to sit down and watch Kill Tony from the inside for the first time. I had been on the show twice, and that was my first time watching it from the audience. So that was pretty cool.
So it's that insanely popular every Monday on 6th Street that it's
Oh
booked in advance. Tickets have gone from being what, $35 for a front row to north of 200 now or something like that. I think I read. Like it's literally it's ground zero there on a Monday. It's that highly contested. That's crazy.
oh man, it's a madhouse. Like, and actually, it's been really cool lately. I think the other day, Ari Matty,
Yep.
he came out and bought all the comedians that are like standing outside waiting to get pulled for Kill Tony.
Yep.
He bought like everybody pizza the other day,
That's cool.
and like Cam Patterson will come out, like different people will come and
Yeah.
like show a presence, and I think that's really cool.
It's like not forgetting where you came from.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's awesome.
And
I always thought on your second episode, I thought McCusker was a bit of a dick. How did you feel about him? Like, I know he's like you said, he's grizzled and he's gruff and like he's maybe gallows too. But I thought he was just reveling too hard. And you were just on song and he was waiting just for that blip. And I thought, come on, man. Like it made me feel a certain way about him. You know what I mean?
no, I thought he was awesome. I think he's hilarious. I think he's really funny.
Yeah.
And I think you're referring to the instance whenever I said something that didn't land,
Yeah.
and you finally bombed.
That's exactly
And
the moment.
as a comedian, you're just going for the joke, right? So like,
Mhm.
he's trying to be funny as much as I am. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that." Like, no, man, what you said was funny. Like, what I said didn't get any laughs, and what you said got laughs. Like, that's the best thing for this situation right now. Is just
Yeah.
getting laughs.
You
That's
get
all.
yeah, sorry, go on. Well, he was
No,
punching down
no,
in
that's
that
all.
moment, I think. And that's why, because the crowd was very much on your side. And so to punch down when they were on your side, I thought, was that the right decision? But then, you know what the fuck do I, what do I know about that?
I don't really look at it that way. I feel like, hey, as long as I'm like, and it's a weird scenario. That's not like a regular comedy show where it's one guy on stage telling jokes.
Hmm.
In that situation, I feel like it doesn't matter who's making everybody laugh as long as you keep the crowd going and laughing.
Hmm.
So if I be the brunt of a joke to keep the energy going,
Sure. Yeah,
so be it. Like,
that's right.
and
It's more or less, it's a TV show, not an open mic. Yeah, I feel you. Have you got your phone screen fixed yet?
have I got what?
Your iPhone fixed yet? Your cracked screen?
Oh no, it's not the screen that's cracked. It's the back. Here, I'll show you.
Oh, so it's still cracked.
Yeah,
That's all right. That still works.
yeah. That's why I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, it is broke, but it still functions.
That's it. I want to talk a bit about travel in a couple of
Okay.
little portions. Firstly, I want to do the Texas scene. I want to go Austin. I want to do a month and just do as many mics as I can. And I want to learn a bit more about the culture. Now, what I'm told, and I'm not sure if it's in Texas or it'll be around, tell me about Buc-ee's. Australians don't know about Buc-ee's.
So so Bucky's is pretty cool. It's a massive gas station, right? And they have food there, and they have other things that like souvenir type gifts, and also just random stuff that's interesting and cool. Like crafts or candles or just random shit you might like. Bucky's is cool. I recommend stopping by at least once.
Yeah.
That being said, there are better places to get barbecue at better gas stations, personally, and it's a little bit overpriced for me. I don't spend a lot of time there.
Okay. So why the hype? Was it the first
It's
of its kind? Is it an oasis, or is it trading on? It's got runs on the board from from before its time. Like,
it's something you don't really run across very often. How many times have you been to a gas station that has 300 fuel pumps? You know,
okay, you got me there. Yeah.
and then you walk in and it's like this massive warehouse size gas station. Like it's just a cool thing to see, and
So is it like a Walmart? It's like a Walmart fucked a Shell, fucked a Sizzlers.
somewhat, yeah.
Okay, well, you pick three things to fuck. What would they be to make them Bucky's then?
Yeah, I'd go with a Walmart. I'd go with a Walmart, I'm trying to think of a gas station chain like a 7-Eleven,
Yep.
and then what's another restaurant that's like not great but not terrible, like a Chili's maybe.
Yeah.
Like that
Okay.
food that's edible and you're not gonna hate it, but
Yeah.
there's a better food out there.
So in Australia, we don't have Chili's and we don't have Arby's either, just so you know. And we barely have any Outback Steakhouses as well. So keep that in mind. All right, thank you for that. And so if I was going to do a month in Austin, let's say money's no issue in terms of I'll get an Airbnb that's close to Sixth Street. Don't have to worry about I'll eat a dinner out every night, I'll make new friends. How would you go about it first time?
So honestly, if you're gonna spend a month in Texas, I don't think you need to give a month to Austin.
Okay.
I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying I don't think you have to.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is there's a really good scene in Fort Worth and Dallas, and there's a really good scene in Houston. And those are a lot of the comics that are signing up every Monday come from Houston and Dallas. They drive in,
How far
but
are
they
the
drive
drives roughly, respectively, as well?
Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas. Well, we refer to because Dallas and Fort Worth are two different cities, but they're kind of together. They've
Okay.
expanded together, and so we refer to that as DFW,
Yep.
Dallas Fort Worth. Uh, Austin to DFW is going to run you about 4 hours.
Hmm.
It's about 200 and it's about 230 miles, more
It's
or
just a
less.
just a straight flat highway.
Yeah, like you're not
Yep.
crossing any hills or mountains or nothing. Yeah, and then Houston's about 2.5, maybe 3 hours from Austin,
Mhm.
and it's like a I forget what they call it, a triplex or something like that. It's a big triangle,
Okay.
DFW, Houston, and Austin. But they all have their own comedy scenes that are pretty good.
Yeah, that's good advice. What sort of car would you hire to do those runs?
You want to rent a car, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
The cheapest, most fuel efficient vehicle you can find.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
So the drives aren't that hectic, like that boring, that you don't want to be in something too small, too big, all that sort of stuff. Okay. And yeah, good
Yeah.
mileage, of course. And can you just sort of like how would you research which venues, which nights, which mics to make like a schedule? Just
So most of your open mics are going to be Mondays.
mhm.
Some places have them on Sundays. Some places have them on Tuesdays. So that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is going to be your real heavy open mic nights.
Mhm.
Some other places might have open mics on Thursdays or Fridays, possibly, and those are cool to find too. There are social media, like on Instagram, there are pages for Austin, like
Yep.
Austin comedy, and I'll
Yep.
send them to you. And it has like a breakdown of all the different open mics in town on
Mhm.
what days and how to get into them.
Mhm.
And then there's one for Dallas as well, or DFW. I mean, there's a page for that, and I'll send that to you when I find it.
Thank you. All right, so you'll
But
help
yeah,
me out is what I'm getting at. You'll help me out, right?
yeah,
All right.
I'll help you out the best I can, and
Thank
then I'll also like try to put you in contact with other
you.
like open mic type of comedians that are in it.
Sure. So on that note, are you getting bookings in the greater area at this point of your career? Or are you still just doing mostly open mics? Because I noticed there's like the Killers of Kill Tony. I've seen an ad for their show here and there, and I thought that's kind of your place in the hierarchy at the moment. I feel you've had so many successful spots, and you're very fucking funny, and you've got name power now. You've got a brand. You've got brand recognition now. So are you doing bookings or group stuff like that, or what's sort of the baseline for your comedy now?
So I try to do as many open mics as I can make. I try to go to. I'm not above an open mic,
Hmm.
but I do have some people that reach out and try to book me, and I'll do just about any show I can get my hands on
Yeah.
at the moment. Like I know some people will turn down certain shows, like I'm better than that. I won't do that. Me personally, hey, if you want to give me time on stage in front of a crowd, awesome. I've been asked to do shows where there's no crowds. Of course, they didn't advertise that. They didn't say, hey, nobody ever comes to this fucking thing. But I'll do that too. Like fuck it, it's all part of the puzzle that makes it work.
Hmm.
And but I've been fortunate enough to have been booked on probably half of the mics. Like I said, I've been on stage 27 times so far ever,
Hmm.
and probably about half of those I've been booked. Like my best weekend in comedy so far, Uncle Laser asked me to open for him in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
I did two shows on Friday and two more shows on Saturday. And then while I was there on Saturday, Hans Kim asked me to open for him. So I got to do two Hans Kim shows and open for him. So I did 6 shows in 2 days, which is the most comedy I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And it was a paid deal.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been fortunate to have shows like that.
And that crowd, to go see Laser and Hans Kim, they'd be very warm to you because they would know you, and it's kind of beyond the Kill Tony nucleus. It's as Tony says, it's the Kill Tony universe now, and you guys are the Marvel heroes of the Kill Tony universe. So people would you could go out there and fart in the mic. I'm sure they would start howling you know for your work. So that's really cool. Have you considered, and this is the other side of the travel sword. Have you considered, doing international festivals? Like, let me ask you, could you do a half hour? Like, can you do a half hour spot, like a good half hour at this point, do you feel?
I don't have a half hour that I'm willing to promise you. Like, hey, I'm gonna kill for half an hour. I don't have that. I can do a solid 10. I
Hmm.
think I can do a pretty good 15. As I don't feel confident saying I have a half hour now.
Okay. Well, that'd be coming, of course. Um, I see the shows like the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Melbourne here, not Melbourne, Florida, is big, like internationally big, as big as the Montreal Festival or the Edinburgh Festival. Excuse me. And if I was just thinking, it's like if you and a couple of other of the extended universe, you could do a fortnight here at a decent venue, get 100 people a night just on your star recognition, your star power, and have a really profitable and fun trip, and do two mics a night for a fortnight, and make a great fucking pack at doing that too. Should be something you should probably have. We could talk about it after the show, but I think that it should be something that you should leverage your celebrity. Brand power with at this point, because you may not be as objective about it as I am, but your Instagram growth, your resonance on the show, like the iron is smoldering for you at the moment, Carlos.
So I'd be 100%. I'd be on board for something like that. I don't have a feeling of like I'm trying to answer the best way possible. I would love to be on board for that, right? I don't know how many tickets I'd be able to sell or what I'd be able to promise as a comedian. I
Hmm.
don't have like the confidence of like I know I can move tickets and I know I can do this or that. I'd be willing and able to do it, right? But yeah, as far as like looking at it as an investment, like, well, if I spend X amount of dollars to get there, I know I'll make this much back. Like for me, it would just be paying for an experience. If I make money in the end, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome too. And that'd be 100%. Like I'd be if you told me like, hey, this is what you need to do and how to get here, I'd be on board. Hell yeah, I'd make it happen.
Yeah. I'm going to have a chat to a promoter, because if you've got your personal, okay, we'll cut this out of the podcast, by the way. This is turning into Disco's business hour, but I'll talk to a promoter I know. And if you got a couple of the other names together, and together you did a solid hour, however that's configured, you could easily do 2 shows a night, get 50 to 80 people per show. Because remember, during the comedy festival, people are just they get there's like a guide that the city puts out, and it's like, oh, I want to go see that, I want to go see that. You get the ad in that booklet. Firstly, you've got the blow-ins, the stragglers, but then you've got, you on your Instagram or on whoever, let's just say it's Laser and Jet Ski Jesse Johnson or whatever. If you go, hey guys, I'm doing the Melbourne Festival, tickets here, like you would, the faithful would come from interstate to come and see you and do a meet and greet. 100%. Like, yeah, that's something. Yeah, I want to talk to a promoter friend of mine and put that idea in your head too, because like I said, your star power, it's so authentic that everyone in the universe there, that you would get the draw here. I mean, Tony's never going to come back. The show's never going to come back. Like he did Australia in 2019 before the pandemic, and did Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Adelaide, and they did their stand-up shows around them as well. And the format of the show back then, with the traveling band, with Jeremiah and whatnot, it was cool. It was part of it, like how it is now, and how much like it's worth as it is, with tickets, with sponsors, with the whole road show. It's never going anywhere other than arenas and back. You know what I mean? Like that's how I feel. And this might be the closest thing to a Kill Tony experience, but it's beyond that now. Like Kill Tony got you guys through the door, but you guys are walking through it. So leverage that, and I think that'd be a great thing to experience. Yeah.
So I that would be awesome to do something like that, and 100% I'd be on board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my attitude isn't like strike while the iron's hot, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm just trying to develop as a comedian. Like I just want to be funny and be able to go on stage and give a good performance every time I do it. That's the goal. The goal isn't like I'm gonna get rich or I'm gonna be famous. Like I just want to be undeniable as a comedian. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
Yeah, unflappable. Like what you were saying before about how you told the joke that you didn't want to tell, um, because of you got a little bit rattled, right? And then
Yeah.
there's no worse feeling than having to go to your go-to joke because you know that you're blanked, and you have to pull out like the one you know is okay. And then 3 seconds into it, you're like, oh fuck, it's meant to be the joke about that. And then you're stuck with it and it's eating up your time. And you just have to be like, oh, okay, I gotta keep drilling. I gotta keep better at this. I gotta keep going. There's nothing worse than that cold feeling when you're into that the backup bit.
So it wasn't really a blank. Like I didn't go blank for that joke. What happened is it's a political joke, and if Trump is in office, it doesn't make sense. So part of me is like, well, this joke's not going to land because he already got elected. Then I'm like, after the fact, I'm like, well, he's not in office yet, so it still hits.
Mhm.
It still makes sense. That's why I'm kind of beating myself up about it. I didn't necessarily go blank. I knew what I wanted to say.
But I
I'm
didn't
like,
mean blank like is you have to.
no, because that happens. You're like, you have like a default. By default, this joke. You know, you could say it in your sleep. You know it so well,
Yeah,
and that happens. We're like, what was I gonna say again? And then boom, he's going to that.
yeah.
And yeah, but no, that was more of a political thing. I was like trying to gauge it politically if it would make sense or land.
But that's right. I had something really funny that I was keeping in my back pocket to tell you, but I've completely forgotten it. Like I wake up excited to tell you this. Like last week, we've been planning this, and I've completely lost it. Like I'll wait; it'll come back eventually. But it was about something about Australia. And given now that we've got that idea in your head just a little bit, that maybe on the horizon you can come visit us. And when you do, I've got a spare room for you. Okay, and your entourage, no worries, come stay with us. You will have to learn more about Australia though. Okay, now I did give you a little bit of I sent you a little bit of homework on Instagram,
Yeah,
to bring you up to speed on some of our parlance and our rituals and our activities. But firstly, I sent you the cheat sheet video about Aussie rules footy. Now,
yeah.
have you seen Aussie rules football before? And did you know much about it, or what do you think now that you've had a look at it?
So I'd never heard of that. I didn't know that was its own. It looks like rugby to me. If I didn't know any better, I'm like, oh, it's rugby.
Yeah.
But to know Australia's spin on that, I'm like, that's pretty cool. And it looks like a sport that was designed like, hey, how can we make something as awesome as possible? That's what that sport looks like to me, and it looks incredible. I'd love to see a match in person.
Yeah.
I don't think that would ever do well in America, only because we pause and take commercial breaks to
Yeah.
make money on TV,
Yeah.
and people want a chance to get up and go grab a beer or some nachos or
Yeah.
something. But I bet an experience in person to go see
Yeah.
is check out an Aussie rules. What you call it, footy or football?
Footy,
What'd you call
yeah.
it?
Footy. We just got footy.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I bet that's a freaking hell of an experience to go see that in person.
Yeah, it is. I'll take you to a game. Mark my words. I'll take you to a game, Carlos. Now, the reason why a few of the clubs here have combines in the States, but the main reason why this sport can't grow internationally is our field of play is like 5 times bigger than the biggest actual piece of grass that you've got to offer us. So that's the reason why this sport is uniquely because they built the stadium around the size of the field. And in that video, you see that an NFL grid is like a little matchbox compared to the Aussie
Hmm.
Oval. So that's pretty interesting. Now, I want to do what they do on all other podcasts and talk shows and stuff. Is that because we're going to go to a game? I want to give you a team in the league to support blindly from now on. And
Okay,
okay, so I want to anoint you the latest member of the Western Bulldogs. Now I know in American sports the Bulldogs have you've got the Georgia Bulldogs, is that right? Or Gonzaga,
correct.
Georgia, Gonzaga.
Georgia, yeah.
Yep. I don't know if they've got any relative negativity or positivity about what type of teams they are, but the Western Bulldogs we used to be called the Footscray Bulldogs. We're from the inner west of Melbourne, so a low socioeconomic area, European migrants, then Asian migrants, and now a bit of everyone these days. We renamed to the Western Bulldogs in the early noughts, I think. Don't hold me to that. We saved the club in the early 90s, late 80s by door knocking to get the money we needed to keep the club afloat. It's a real salt of the earth, authentic team. We had a little bit of success nearly a decade ago. We won the Premiership Cup, the grand final, which is the Super Bowl of the league. But before that, we hadn't had success in a very, very long time. And like the modern era of the game, a powerhouse club can have 5+ Super Bowls to their team's name. We've got two since the 50s. So I'll get you a membership pack. I'll get that sent out to you, an international member pack, and a hat, of course, or a badge for your cowboy hat. That we can have that. So I'll sort that out offline. But if you accept the invitation, Carlos, you're now a Western Bulldog, and we're very happy to have you.
That sounds awesome. So it's called the Western what?
Bulldogs.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm just writing it down so I don't forget it.
I'll send it all through to you. And when I cut this up, I'll put the appropriate overlays on the video and whatnot, so people know what we're talking about. So that's good. Happy to have you. Very happy to have you. Now, I also wanted to ask you. This is just a bit of slang, uh, and if there's a similar version, do you know what a dingo's breakfast is?
A dingo's breakfast.
Yeah.
So a dingo's a wild dog,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What would a wild dog have for breakfast? Sounds like anything that's vulnerable, like something that's left out, something that's like easy to get a hold of, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Most dingoes live in remote areas. Okay. So you're not wrong in your logic, but a dingo's breakfast is a piss and a look around.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's self-explanatory. Um, on the subject of native animals, the I sent you some videos of goanna pulling.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, do you have goannas in the States? The big lizards? You probably do. That's probably a silly question.
A goanna,
Yeah.
or is that what we refer to as an iguana?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. That sounds plausible. Yeah. So I'll put the video up. So I engaged a very good friend of mine who I consider to be the expert on goanna pulling, just so I could get the official rules of the engagement. Now I asked him. I said to Smudgy, my questions were because I wanted to give you the real info so you can, spread the word about goanna pulling. The video I sent you had two blokes in their jocks goanna pulling. So the basic sport is you draw a line and the line has to be straight, and it's basically like reverse sumo wrestling. You join both participants' belts together to make one big belt. You put it around their neck like a fan belt. They get down on their palms and knees, and you've got to pull the other bloke backwards across the center line in their total body length across the line to get the win. And the questions I had for my expert, so that we could make sure we send the gospel, is that all right. Do both of the participants have to strip down, or can they remain fully clothed? because that one video was the blokes were in their jocks for some reason, and the the official line is fully clothed preferred. So that's good. Um, so what if one of them isn't wearing a belt? And he goes, if you don't have a belt, find a belt. So
Fair enough.
yeah. Um, is it one round only? And it says one round. Winner is now the alpha male, like the jungle, until he loses, but he gets right of reply. So you can keep going around in a loop, really, if you're, going back and forth, which is kind of cool. Um, and is the size of the circle uniform or is it improvised? And he says the circle doesn't particularly matter as long as the center line is straight. And then he closes with always remember it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And
Yeah, right.
that's resonant for an awful lot of things, I think.
Yes, sir.
How good. Is there anything similar in the because that goanna pulling, that's something you'd find in roadhouses, off the beaten track, long stretches of highway out in the country, the far north end, all that sort of stuff, far north Queensland, Alice Springs, the dead center, all that. Is there anything quirky or similar in your travels that you've observed, like goanna pulling?
I can't say there's. I've seen one that's, and I don't think it's very popular. They put a string behind the ears. Have you seen that?
No, it sounds fucked already. Go on.
I forgot what culture it's from exactly, but
Yeah.
there's a culture that they have string like a almost like a shoestring, and they put it behind their ear like a big belt, like a big loop,
Mm.
and it's just pulling on solely your ear. You don't have it's not around your neck or the rest of your head. It's just your ear. And the
Yeah.
other guy does the same, and they both pull, and whoever like crosses the line or gives up loses.
Yeah,
And
right.
that's what that reminded me of on that goanna, whatever it's called.
Goanna
And
pulling.
then, yeah, and then there's what we used to call Indian wrestling. I don't remember the rules exactly, but I remember we used to do that when we were young. And you like lay on your back and you like pick up one of your legs and somebody else is laying on their back opposite of you, like they're right beside you, face the other way, and you I don't remember the objective to that either. But I know that's a thing. And then amongst like the Western cowboy culture, there's a game called left leg or inside leg,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I've heard it referred to as cowboy jousting. We never called it that, but essentially you get a rope and somebody else grabs a rope and you walk each other and you like try to rope each other's feet
Okay.
as you're walking past each other, and that's what we play a lot, or we used to play as kids. We still do now. We're getting old and fat now, me and my friends, but that's something that we engage in.
Okay. How do you think you would go at a goanna pull?
I don't know, man, because I feel like I got some fight left in me,
Yeah.
but also I'm not as strong as I used to be.
Sure.
So I want to say, hell yeah, I'd kick anybody's ass, but I'm talking about like 18-year-old Carlos, not 30-year-old Carlos.
Yeah.
That's who I'm talking about when I say that. And then some 30-year-old Carlos gets myself in a situation. I'm like, oh, I'm not as strong as I used to be.
Everything hurts and I want to go to bed. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, then
Uh,
there's instances where I'm like, I'm not as strong as I used to be. And then I do something. I'm like, man, where did that come from?
yeah.
I'll pick something up, or like the other day we were loading these horses, and these are young horses, but there was a horse that didn't want to get on the trailer, and without speaking or communicating, it was just a feeling, like an emotion. My buddy and I, we look at each other and we locked hands as men, and we put our hands like behind the horse's ass,
Yep.
and we picked its ass up off the ground and we walked it in the trailer. So when you do that, the horses the horse has like two options. You either walk forward with your front legs or you fall on your face out of like protest, like I'm not
Mhm.
going up the ramp into the trailer. But the other horses are like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna start walking. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, that's a 500-600 pound horse. I don't know how much weight is on my hand, but I know
Mhm.
that it's not a little bit. And
Sure.
yeah, so I'm like, I'm not that strong. And then I see stuff like that. I'm like, well, maybe there's something there. I don't know. I don't work out or nothing.
Yeah, but your job keeps your cholesterol low, I'm sure.
I don't
Sitting
know.
up straight in the truck keeps your back muscles all as they should be. If you've got good posture while you're driving, that's counts for
Now me,
something.
I drive an old like a Kenworth, and you got to sit like this, or else you're not cool.
Oh, we've got
Yeah,
we when you drive like that in your passenger car here, we call that it's called fat arming.
fat arming.
Yeah, so you got one arm on the window ledge on the sill, and that
Oh
makes
yeah.
it split out.
I don't know what it is about truck drivers, but like the culture of like the cool truck drivers is the seat is all the way on the floor. You can't even see the road,
Yeah,
and like they're just sitting real low and slow like that. And I catch myself doing it every now and then. Like it just I put the seat back and drop it on the floor, and that's how I feel most comfortable. But then I realize like, well, this is not the most practical way to drive this truck, but it is what it is.
yeah. And how hectic are lot lizards? Am I saying that right?
Man, yeah, so it's still a thing. It's just not very common.
Mhm.
And the main reason is a lot of truck stops nowadays in America, they're owned by corporate like companies. So
Yeah,
like a Love's, Pilot, Flying J, and those people don't want
yeah.
that kind of business in their properties. So a majority of the truck stops, they're not a fan of it, so they run it off. They don't really support it
Mm.
compared to like back in the day. If you had a family-owned truck stop, they're not paying security to go run those people off. It's none of their business. As long as
Yeah,
you're purchasing diesel or food inside, they don't really give a shit.
yeah.
But no, they're not really a thing anymore. They still
Okay.
exist. They're still around, just not like they used to be.
You got to go find them like a taco stand, right?
Yeah, you gotta seek out a very shitty truck stop to go find them. Yeah.
We'll wrap up soon, Carlos. I'm really super appreciative for your time, and it's been wonderful. Like I'm still excited just chatting to you. We're gonna get a bit serious about comedy now because that is
Yes, sir.
the ties that bind us initially. Um,
Yes, sir.
there's a thing called a trilemma, and it's a business expression where basically it's an imaginary triangle, and it's about anything that you want done. You've got fast, reliable, and cheap. And you can only
Yeah.
pick two out of the three, that thing. So I've come up with my version for, I think, comedians. And I want to see if this has got any validity or if it's a high brain thing or whatever it might be. But I think the version for comedians is in the triangle, you've got in one corner believers, so people who support us, who've always told us we're funny, who say you should go do this, you should go do this. So you've got believers. Then you've got natural talent, natural performer, X factor. Okay. And then at the top of the triangle, you've got tragedy slash trauma, right? Because it's said, it's most comedians are, they come from the darkness, that sort of thing. So two out of the three, do you see yourself fitting that trilemma, or do you think the concept is bunky? So you've got tragedy slash trauma, natural talent, X factor performer, and then people supporting you, believers, pushing you to go and be what they think you can be.
Are you asking me what I think I fit in?
Yeah, if
What
if
two?
it fits, if this has got any holds any water. Because personally, I think there's something to it, even if it's a bit loose. But if you could immediately think, well, I had no one pushing me into comedy, but as evidence, I'm a natural performer and I've got a rocky background.
Yeah, so I definitely gonna go with the trauma, and then the what was the X Factor one? What was
Yeah,
that?
natural talent, natural performer, X factor.
I'm gonna go with those two because
Yeah,
I didn't have any training the first time or any practice the first time I went on stage. It just
yeah,
happened. So I feel like I qualify for that section, and then definitely have like the childhood trauma stuff
yeah,
for sure. I
yeah.
used to I used to think I was a really shitty fighter. I used to think I didn't know how to fight very well as a kid, and then I realized my mom's husband was always going to win. You know,
Yeah. That's that's heavy, bro.
so yeah, definitely, I'd definitely say I fit that category.
Thank you. Well, thank you for adding validity to the triangle, the trilemma. I'll try it on some other comics in future as well and see if we can build the data, build the database there. Lastly, in terms of comedy, in terms of life, what is success for you? What does it look like?
Oh man, so I'm going to go with a basic answer first and say being able to pay the bills with I'm not saying getting rich. That's not what I mean, but being able to support yourself and do comedy full time is successful. I feel like anything past that is just extra, right? Because at the end of the day, I love doing comedy, and if I could focus on that 100% and not have a day job to where I need to support myself, that would be success. Some people see it as like, oh, if you can get rich, if you have a mansion or nice cars, like that's not the mark of success. The mark is for me would be like, hey, I can focus on this 100% and not have to worry about going to work. That would be success for me.
And that's pretty aligned with the kind of character you put forward. You're very hardworking, very straight down the line, and keep it simple in a good way. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, one last question, and tell me if this is off limits. It's not crazy or anything, but we learned the last time we saw you on Kill Tony that you have a girlfriend. We
Yes,
didn't
sir.
know that the first time or the second time. Is this new? Who is she? What does she like? Is she into comedy? Do you live together? What does she do? Just give us the elevator version. Like however much you want to let us know. We want to know who is looking after you. There you go.
All right. So we've been dating on and off like 2 years or so, 2.5 years, and there was like pauses and breaks in between.
Hmm.
And man, it's kind of weird to say. It's like the day I went on Kill Tony the first time,
Yeah.
I like showed up on her doorstep, like, hey, we'd been broken up and for a while, and she was in a relationship with somebody else. I didn't know that because I didn't talk to her,
Sure.
and so like I showed up at her door one day, and I was like, hey, I feel like we need to talk. I don't know, and then that's when I learned that she had a boyfriend and that I kind of overstepped my bound. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Mm.
And then it was just a crazy day that event happened. And then later that night, I went on Kill Tony and started like my comedy career.
Yeah.
And just a fun little story for you. But she part of the reason why we like got along so well in the beginning is she's a huge fan of comedy. She loves comedy. Like she's been to way more comedy shows than I have.
Mm.
She knows way more comedians than I know. But the first time I told her I wanted to do comedy, this is like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I mentioned to her, like, yeah, I'd like to try comedy one day. And I told her like one or two of my jokes that I had, and she like laughed at me. She's like, oh, yeah, don't quit your job, was essentially her response.
Yeah.
So then I completely deleted those jokes because I had them written down on my phone. I'm like, all right, there goes that. I'm never doing comedy again in my life, or never going to try to do comedy, in my life. And then that was like the first time I ever told anybody out loud in person, like, I want to try this. And that's how that went. I got like shot down.
Mm.
And then for some reason I was like, let me write some more jokes. Like, let me try this again. And I started writing jokes. And then yeah, so it went the way it went. I remember like I told her, I said, remember the time you told me like you laughed at me because I said I wanted to do comedy and you thought it was ridiculous? And she's like, why are you listening to me? Like I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. Whatever, dude.
That's a very shared experience, Carlos. Like you have no idea how much that hits close to home. So
Why do you say that?
because before you get up and do your first time and you confide in people that, yeah, look, I think I'm going to have a crack at this. And then the first jokes you come up with and you haven't performed on the stage, you don't have your confidence, you don't know what it's really like up there, but you've still written jokes. And then you tell them to people who know that you haven't been up, who you haven't started yet, this is all talk, and then they shit on them, simply put. And
Yeah.
then you figure them out later. You're like, no, they're pretty funny. Like, and then like yeah. So thank you for I'm going to show this to someone and yeah, it's going to get some humble pie. So thank you.
So like when that what did you call that? A try not a trifecta, a
Trilemma.
trilemma.
Yeah.
Whenever you brought up the outside influence, like
Yep.
people saying, "Hey, you're funny, you should try comedy."
Yeah.
It's been like the opposite. Like anybody I've ever not everybody, but most people that I've like before I kill Tony that I mentioned, like, yeah, I would like to do comedy. They're like, okay, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. And they say things like you're funny, but you're not a comic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of shit.
And then you realize or you learn as you get into it, you're like, yeah, nobody's a comic when they first start. Like nobody's a comedian, man. Like
Yeah.
you become one.
100%.
And
Yeah, even like noticing like MCs that do the local spots, they're still even just trying to find their stride as MCs, which is a different path to being a comic. And they're trying to figure out what's funny, you're trying to figure out what's funny. It's all completely divergent. And yeah, there's a place for all of us somewhere, Carlos, isn't there?
I feel like everybody on Earth has a purpose, and there are a few people that are lucky enough to find it before they die.
Mm,
And I feel like I found mine. Like when I found comedy, it made sense. I'm like, oh, like this is what I'm meant to do.
sure.
Whether I end up successful or good at it or not, I don't know. But now that I found it, I feel like it's my purpose now.
Yeah. It's like if you could bottle that feeling when you step off stage, knowing that you made a room feel a certain way, that's that's the addictive part. That's the validating part. You know, for
I
me.
No, for sure, 100%. I agree. And I was just gonna say, like, I feel like my relationship with comedy has been what I think heroin addicts go through. They say when you do heroin, the first time's the best time.
Yeah.
Like it's never gonna feel greater than that. And so far, like my first time on Kill Tony, my first time ever doing comedy,
Yeah.
went the way it did. It went as good as it did. So every time I've done comedy since, it's been hard to like replicate that. Like
Sure.
that feeling of like, what the fuck did I do? What did I get? I was panicked when I got off stage on the first time I did Kill Tony. When I got off stage, I was panicking like before I went on stage. I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, what happened? But I was like so full of adrenaline and stuff.
Mm.
I remember the employees at the mothership or Kill Tony or whoever they work for backstage after I went on, like when I got off stage, were like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "I don't even know." Like I was fucking freaking out. But yeah, chasing that feeling, and I know it's possible because when I did those shows with Hans Kim and Uncle Laser, I want to say I hate to say like I killed, right? Because I don't think being on stage as little as I have the right to say I fucking killed.
Sure.
But it went really good, and I got a really good response. And you mentioned earlier that it helped being at like a very healthy Kill Tony crowd. After the show, I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh yeah, these people know who I am. Like they're gonna, maybe a quarter of them had remember like knew who I was or remembered me from a past episode.
Hmm.
Most people did not know who I was, and they still laughed and had a good time. And
Hmm.
I purposely, I don't know if this is like good or bad to do, but I stuck around after the shows, like when the crowds left, and I wanted to hear people like what people have to say, like or just say thank you for coming or whatever.
Hmm.
And a lot of them were like, "Hey man, you're really funny. What's your name again?" And I'm like, "Oh, these people don't know who I am," which is awesome. I love that too. Because I'd hate to just ride a wave of Kill Tony like the whole time. Like
Hmm.
that would be great to say like, "Oh, I made my like I'm funny or I'm actually funny," versus like, no, they just laugh because they like you from Kill Tony. Like I,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't mean it's talking a negative matter, but
Well, no,
it
because
was really cool.
like you said, we're still very new to the game, and but your writing is very clever. Like you're clearly talented and smart with the craft. Like I still reflect, for lack of a less bloody flowery word, about your bit about you know smoking pigs ain't the same as in South Texas. Like that's clever. It's funny. Me and my friends still randomly just go gang gang. Like so. Yeah,
Oh man,
you'll
yeah.
transcend that, but it's good. Take all the value with it. Like it's a great shot in the arm to start off with. But you've got the ball now. It's up to you to. What am I giving you advice for? Fucking hell.
No, I'm happy to hear it. Like I don't think that I'm of any position to tell you or anybody else what to do comedy wise. But if anybody has anything to say, I'm 100% all ears. Like, yeah, what do you got? Because I haven't figured this shit out. What do you got?
Yeah,
And so like right now, I'm just writing jokes. Like, though I'm doing the only thing because I can't do a lot of shows because I'm on the road. What I can do is write a lot of jokes.
yeah,
So that's what I'm going for. That's what I'm doing. And I I try not to have a punchline or a tag or anything where you can guess what I'm going to say.
yeah,
That I try to prevent that from happening. I
hmm,
like a lot of misdirects, misleads.
yeah,
That's what I like. So when people ask me what kind of comedy do, I'm like, I don't know, but I like for people to not know what the joke is before it happens.
yeah. That's
That's what I'm
that.
for.
Yeah. Sorry for talking over you, Carlos. That was
No,
explained to me quite similarly. It's like that's when people go, "Oh, okay, haha." and then something completely left field when they've 100% they know what you're going to say, that's when you really get them. That's when they clap as well as laugh. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I've got this one joke. I'll keep it brief because I've retired this joke because there's a what's that? There's a saying. It's like, oh, if you don't feel comfortable saying it, the audience won't feel comfortable hearing it or something like that. And I
yeah.
got this joke about how me and my best friend, we don't talk anymore because I think it's because of brand loyalty. You know, like he likes Coca-Cola. I like Pepsi. He likes this washing detergent, Surf. I like Omo. We've been friends for 20 years, man. And like, when you're that close to someone, your families get close. And so last Christmas, my mum, and remember, we're not friends. I don't know why. Last Christmas, my mum gave him a PS5. His mum gave me an exquisite hand job, right? And then see, everyone's like, oh, Xbox, and then just pull that shit. So I've retired that one because I don't like saying it. I don't like going too dark, like too dirty. Like it's not hectic dirty, but like it doesn't fit with my other stuff. But like that's probably the best example I've got of something I've written where everyone was ready, going, yeah, Xbox, and then hit them with something with the Mr. X. So yeah, I'm glad you
I
laughed.
think I think that's a great joke, and I think you can say my mom gave him a PS5, and she gave me the box, like kind of play stupid on there, you know.
Yeah, that's good too.
And if somebody can heckle you, be like, "Oh, you mean an Xbox?" Like, no, 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 her box.
Have you been stopped? Have you been stopped in your tracks by hecklers yet?
Um, no, I've been heckled, and I don't have any crowd work under my belt, so I
Yeah,
just act like I hear it because I don't have any defense mechanisms. Like,
yeah,
yeah, never dude. Like, I don't acknowledge. I just keep going in my material because that's all I have to offer right now.
yeah. And that's the one
Um,
thing that comes with exposure with frequency is
yeah,
good fucking backhands. I'm terrible with it too. Like one time, some guy really let me have it, and I'm like, "Yeah, you're not wrong." Anyway, so I was fucking my best friend's mom, like like some bullshit.
yeah. I've been trying to like write clever crowd work jokes. I don't have them yet. I'm
Yeah,
not comfortable saying them.
yeah,
Um, and like I was talking to a comedian about it that's like been doing comedy for years, and I was like, "What? How do you feel about crowd work?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. Just get comfortable on stage first. The crowd work will come later.
yeah,
As young as you are, I wouldn't worry about it.
yeah,
There are people that want crowd work because it's you could post clips of it without burning your material,
yeah.
but that makes kind of for like a little bit of a toxic culture that now people go to shows and they want to talk the whole time. You know,
Yeah, that's interesting and very true.
yeah, I'm not against crowd work, and I'd love to be able to do it very well. Like Big J Okerson,
Hmm.
great crowd work guy. The guy's amazing. What's his name?
That Matt Rife, dude.
No, 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 yes, but um,
Oh,
God,
Sam Talent is really good at crowd work.
that Sam Talent. I saw him
Yeah,
uh, here at Creek in the Cave the other day. Holy shit! Somebody said something in the crowd, and he went off on like 5 to 10 minutes, and and then brought it back to his material.
yeah,
And I'd seen him do the same set before, and that was not the set. I'm 100% sure that that's just off the cuff crowd work, and then
yeah,
boom,
yeah.
brought it back somehow. I'm like, this guy's a fucking wizard. Sam
He is.
Talent's
I
very,
watched his special. He's so fucking funny, dude. Like it makes you just want to be like, all right, I got work to do. Like he's so
yeah,
good, so good.
funny, clever. I mean,
Hmm.
just yeah, he's got a lot going on for him.
What do
And
you think about? Sorry, go on, please, Carlos.
what I'm saying, I look at someone like that, and I feel like if I can get to that level, I'd be fucking happy with myself. Whether I made $1 million or not, if I
Yeah,
could be that good on stage, I'd be happy with myself.
yeah. He's a bit of a this is a different comic who's a bit of an oddball and has a very different style that you need to either get it or you don't. What do you think of Rick Glassman?
I'm not familiar with Rick Glassman other than he was on the panel when I was on stage last.
That's right,
I
he
don't
was
know.
too.
I don't know his material. I don't know his stand up. I don't know anything about him.
Yeah. I think I get him. He's very quirky and very um he plays the fool when he's actually making you do what he wants. And it's a very smart, very interesting weave. And you either love it or you don't. I think it's so clever. It's really funny. Like, have you seen Matan on YouTube? That kid who pretends he's Israeli and he pretends he's 17?
Okay, yeah. So I've seen it. I don't really get it, so I don't find it funny yet.
Yeah.
I'll watch more of it so I can try to like understand it.
Mm.
But and it's taken off, it's grabbing traction, so it's not dog. It can't be dog shit if it's like getting that kind of attention from
Mm.
both the audience and the guest. You know, like he's
Yeah.
had really good guests on, so there's something there. I just don't get it yet. I haven't really understood it yet.
Yeah. Well, he got famous because he roasted some OnlyFans models on some other podcast about reading he's like, oh, this chick was bragging about how many books she reads. And he's like, oh yeah, name 5 books you read. And she's like, oh, the Harry Potter books, and he's just like War and Peace, fucking, like firing them off all the books he's read. And he's like this big and he pretends he's like 15, 16 years old. Um, the biggest thing I like about his work is when he breaks character, but involuntarily, when he's no, like when he's so funny and what's happening is so intense that he, cracks for a split second. That's what I find the most funny in all of comedy is that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's definitely worth looking. But you have to keep your eyes on the road when you're driving. You can't be watching; you're only listening. So,
Hmm.
Carlos, this concludes episode 1 of Into the Discoverse. Thank you so much. I couldn't ask for a better guest for episode 1. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your opinions. Thank you for your input, your guidance, and your kind words and all sorts. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. And, we'll continue this offline and get a few things going. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Good night.